Hono he gloria he maunga rongo ki nui te mata te whenua whakaara pai ki ngā tangata katoa. Amen. E te atua hono o konunga I tēnei rā ki te Waiwhetū tapu ki te gloria ki te kāpau tapatai. A kia whakanui ati mātau ki a koe rungi tau te rona e nohu mai nei koe. E pokuri mai nei te mana ki tana mo mātau I tēnei rā. A pitia mai te kina hoki o mātau Waiwhetū mo mātau tina ki a ta mohi ai mātau koea I hoa. Gloria ki tō ingoa tapu. Amen.
O tēnā koe matua, mō te tuwhera I te wahine. Tēnā rā tātou katoa. How scary, this is so scary. Look at you all. Oh my gosh. It's much better being on that side. Yesterday I was on that side. But anyway, tēnā rā tātou. Thank you for coming to our talk today. So we're just going to kind of tag team in and out, tell you about the research we've been doing. But our talk today really is mainly around te hokinga mai te taonga. Okay, so this is us in 2016 or 17 or something. So we haven't changed much, I don't think. We might be even getting younger. Oh, I'll get this little thing off there. How do I get that off there? Okay, so that is the name of our project. We are a publicly funded project, Te Apārangi Royal Society. Yeah, so this is us at the beginning and at Otago Museum. So this is us, who we are. I think, do we need any introduction? Oh, okay. Shall we start with you then? Or shall I introduce you? All right, so this is our Ranui, our mentor, our cultural advisor, our mātanga, our wonderful Nan. I'm not supposed to cry in this, but it's just all very emotional. So Ranui has guided us through this whole project, through this whole process, and we're forever grateful for her guidance and wisdom. Then Dr. Catherine Smith, who we call the scientist, but actually the Pūtaiao, our colleague, also our friend, and yeah. And then Ko. I'm the comedian of the group, hopefully. So there's a little bit of laughter, so that's a good thing. As weavers, both Ranui and I come into the project as weavers and researchers. We're all researchers. We're all makers and creators. And the project for us, te rā for us, was a gift, really, for our lives. I don't know if our whānau will agree with that, but for us as researchers, as makers, as creators, te rā is a gift for us. This is a timeline of our project.
Maybe a little bit of how we came to get here, because...
Plan, yeah.
Well,
yeah.
Also that this wasn't the first time we all met each other.
Mm. So Catherine and I met a few years ago. When was it?
2019 at Otago Museum.
That's right. So Catherine was restoring, conserving a hinaki that was suspended on the ceiling in the Otago Museum. I think a bit of a conservator's nightmare, would you agree?
I would totally classify it as that.
Shall I just let you tell us that story?
So the hinaki had been in storage for a long time. It had been collected in the 1830s and was really falling apart and had large voids, and we needed a weaver. So I found Donna, who was teaching weaving in Otipoti at the time. So I joined her weaving class, and she joined the conservators team and wove large infill pieces to help bring the hinaki back to life. So that's the first time we met each other. But you fellas knew each other long before that. Where did you meet Ranui?
Well, we're weavers. We've had a long association through our national network, but also we travelled for the Māori Art Meets America, the Eternal Thread. We went to overseas together. I was part of the weaving team. Do you want to add?
So I guess when it came time to think about how we could all work together on this project, we were really lucky that we actually had a relationship of trust. Yeah. I met Ranui when I was studying for my PhD, which is 10 years, well, actually it's longer. But so we all got together and because we had that relationship of trust already. So that was before we put in the grant application.
Yeah. So putting in a grant application is a major exercise in itself. Do we need to talk a little bit about that? Well, I think, first of all, so this timeline is just a little snapshot of part of the journey. So 2014, myself, Rangi Mātāmua, Haki Tuopiki and Aroha Mitchell, we presented our research actually on traditional Pacific navigating in the belly of the beast, a place called the Thor Heyerdahl Museum, and with Linda Smith as she was a keynote. So she took us with her and we presented our research there. And then Linda encouraged us, because we were overseas already, make a date with the British Museum and go and see te rā, because she knew about my fascination with te rā. So way before 2014, Maureen Lander had sent me some images of te rā that she'd taken at the British Museum and asked me if I could unpack the construction methods. And so there began my fascination with this taonga. So anyway, Rangi, Haki, Aroha and I went to see te rā. We were there for maybe two, maybe 3 days. And we talked about everything and everything. And that first engagement with te rā, I had seen Maureen's images, but actually seeing the taonga was the most critical part of trying to unpack the construction methods, which leads to another thing which you can remind me to when we talk about the community engagement. Right. Yeah, to see the actual taonga is really important. So anyway, so that was my first visit to te rā. Do you want to talk about your 2015 visit?
Oh, yeah, we were at the British Museum looking at Kākahu Rāranga for another Marsden grant, for a Fast Start Marsden grant. There were unresolved aspects of my PhD research, and I went to talk to Ranui at Canterbury Museum, and actually Helen Brown, who's sitting in the audience, introduced me to Ranui, so she's responsible for this whole journey as well. And Ranui and I then went on this crazy mission for 3 years, going around the world looking for Kākahu Rāranga. And we were at the British Museum because they've got 2, and we'd been there for a couple of days, and we were sitting in the team room, and Jill Hassel, who's the collection manager there who was helping us out, just randomly said, "Is there anything else you'd like to see, Ranui?" And Ranui very cheekily and smartly said, "Oh, I'd really like to see te rā." And much to our amazement, they actually went and got te rā. Like, I couldn't believe it was happening. It was like a pinch me moment. And suddenly we're in a room with part of te rā rolled out on a table. And what did that prompt in you, Ranui?
Yeah. Well, I'd known about te rā prior to being in the British Museum, obviously. And it came through from my childhood, really, because Te Rangihiroa visited my grandfather, and even though I was too young to know and understand what was happening at the time, they always talked about what he was doing in his world. And my sister used to take it all in. She was older than me, but I didn't take much in at the time. But as we got older and we started to talk about Te Rangihiroa, who'd long since passed, I started reading his books and journals and read about te rā and that. So I knew that te rā was in the British Museum, and when I was there with Catherine and Julie asked what would I like to see, I asked to see te rā. And when I saw it, well, I just cried. I just katangi ahau. And I just said to Catherine, we've got to do something about this. We've got to try and bring te rā home. And that was the beginning of our journey with te rā.
But when Ranui says take te rā home, we never really thought that te rā would be home. We aimed to get it as much... The sort of fundamental idea was that if the British Museum burned down tomorrow, we wanted to make sure that every single thing we could document about te rā, all of that information, images, etc., could be here, available for all New Zealanders. It was the further we got along and the further the relationships were developed with the British Museum and Julie and Jill, that it took time. We didn't really think we were going to get to bring te rā home. So.
Physically.
Yep. So, we've got the grant. You can see the time it takes to. The grant goes through a really rigorous peer review, blind peer review. It's a highly contested fund. So
we felt like we'd won the lotto. Right?
Oh, it was like that, totally.
We didn't expect to get it. It was like winning the lotto.
Yeah. And then, so 2018 was our first visit as a team. We wanted to stay for 3 weeks. We stayed for 3 days. Just want to thank Julie, wherever she is, Julie Adams, for the care that they took of us when we were there. I really want to acknowledge too Jill Hassel. She's not here. I'm sure she would have loved it. Hey, Julie? Yeah, Jill Hassel, who has always been, like all the times I've been to the British Museum, Jill has been a stalwart, getting us access to all of our taonga. So I really want to acknowledge her as well. So then 2020, we did this crazy photogrammetry process with a team called
Cultural
Heritage Imaging. They're from San Francisco, and we brought them over to the BM. Aroha and I went to Manaaki. We took these amazing, I say we, but they took these incredible images, and we've got some footage of that process as well. So really, our project, the kaupapa of our project was to, as a multidisciplinary project, bringing lots of eyes and minds and hands to te rā, to record, to document everything, just as Catherine said, with a view to disseminating all of the information that we could gather. The revitalisation that's talked about in this slide is really that, to kind of enliven the Māori through documentation, if that's possible. That was part of our intention, really, was to just bring te rā home in the non-physical, because it was a dream that we could bring te rā back, given the historical relationships with museums and our taonga. But over the years that we've been working with the British Museum, we've built up an amazing relationship with them. And I really believe that's why te rā is here today.
And it wouldn't be here if Julie hadn't supported us.
That's right.
So thank you, Julie. We all hope.
Yay, Julie.
So one of the ace things that we could do was take some footage. We were hoping to document as much of the journey as well. So we've got a great person called Adam Rowley who lives in London. This film's by him. Today we're at the British Museum to start our journey of examination of te rā, the last remaining Māori Sail. There are a number of us with different goals and objectives that we need to meet by the end of the 3 days. So there are 2 weavers, Donna Campbell and Ranui Ngarimu, and they're aiming to try to understand how the weave structure of te rā works. It's a very characteristic and unique artefact, and it's not easy to understand how the weave structure works. So today they've started the process of talking and looking and trying to work out just how the weavers who made it managed to get it to work. The other person here is Hokimate Howard. She's a feather identification expert. So she specialises in identifying New Zealand feathers on kakahu or cloaks.
So even though the sail has been at the British Museum for several hundred years, nobody has ever definitively identified what the feathers are that it's made of.
My job is to identify the feathers in the sail, and they are adorning the top of the sail and on the streamer on the side. So my methods will be to look at the feather down, which is at the feather base, and also to look at the whole feather. So looking at the colour, the size and the shape and any patterning on the feather, and to try to match those two up. So the feather down can actually tell me what kind of bird that it came from, and the physical characteristics of the feathers can tell me where on the bird that the feather came from, and sometimes what species. So those two methods will hopefully help me tell the rest of the team and all of New Zealand that have been wanting to know what feathers have been in the sail for the last 200 years, what species they came from.
I'm here to identify the plant materials that te rā is made of. So we're all, at the moment, trying to work out how to fit that in, how to make sure that we document the sail and get as much information as we can in 3 days to take home to New Zealand.
We are really interested in how the te rā has been constructed and the techniques used to construct it and what it's been constructed from. We presume that this article is made of harakeke, but I am wondering if it's made of tikaka, and I'll be delighted to find out one way or the other whether I'm right or wrong. Fibre to me feels like it's tikaka, the way it feels and the way it moves.
Today we've come in and greeted te rā. We've looked at the structure of the sail. We've talked about how we think it might work. The weavers have had really in-depth conversations about their ideas about various aspects of it, the edges, the joins. We've been starting the process of sampling from the sail to identify the feathers and to identify the plant materials. And these things take a really long time. We have ideas, we talk about them, we change our minds. In terms of sampling, we have to think very carefully about ethical approaches to make sure that we honour the integrity of the sail and yet are able to take small pieces that we can identify the materials from.
If anybody wants to watch the whole movie, it's on our website, so you can...
And you heard me saying there that that on our first visit there, I thought that it may have been made out of tikaka. And the reason for that is that here in tikaka is more, it's a stronger fibre if it's exposed to the ocean. So that was my view on it, but of course I was proved absolutely wrong. And it's harakeke, and that's fine. Yeah. So I mean, those are some of the, and the other thought that I had at the time too was this a seabird? Because it would make sense to me if this sail was being used on the ocean, that these feathers might be from seabirds. Mm-hmm. And then we came home and I talked to Dr. Paul Schofield at Canterbury Museum, and that theory quickly went out the window as well.
So I was just gagging for an opportunity for everybody to get to see me in a lab coat. Not. This is part of the process that you have to go to identify plant materials in New Zealand taonga to get them to back home. So on the left-hand side you can see a picture of te rā. I took, excuse me, Ranu, I can't remember how many samples I took, but it should be written down there. You can see they're all numbered. 14, maybe 14, 15? Yeah. That looks pretty random, but there's actually very specific photographs, so I know exactly on te rā. You can see from that picture another great thing the British Museum did for us. Can you see those blue lines across the hiki? That's the previous mounting system that was used for te rā, the only time it's been put on display. They were fabric sleeves sewn across those pieces, and then they were put on a mounting system. But, of course, they obscure all of the information that weavers want. So Julie and the rest of the team advocated for those to be removed. So when we arrived, those pieces had been taken off so we could actually look at the join. So that was another great thing that we were able to achieve. Of course, then when you take the mounting system off, you have to figure out how to mount it when you do put it on display, but that's a whole other story. So I took tiny samples, 15 of them, and then I had to get them back to New Zealand, and now they're a hazard. You know, they're a biohazard bringing them back to New Zealand. So ironically, you have to go through very stringent customs processes, and they have to be transferred into a biosecure facility. And this is me with another person who's helped us a lot, Associate Professor Janice Lord from the University of Otago Botany Department, and this is her herbarium. So all of our plant materials that we've sampled overseas have to go in and be examined in that facility, which is another bit of the process. So you can see it in its little biohazard, one of the samples in its biohazard. It has to have the biohazard tags. And when we arrived back in New Zealand, we had to go into the biohazards area, have to be inspected to make sure we're not bringing in anything that's going to harm New Zealand. And then they're transferred straight to the herbarium. Then a small bit of the piece of leaf is then macerated, broken down into its small constituent parts, which are the ultimate fibres, the cells, and that's how we identify. New Zealand plants used in textiles all look very similar under a microscope. They're all leaf materials mostly, and the only way to identify fibres is to break them down into those individual cells that then have very specific characteristics. It took over 10 years of work at the University of Otago with a number of researchers to get to the point where we could confidently identify New Zealand plant materials. So we tried heaps of methods. It's actually a bit more than 10 years. Lots of funding from the University of Otago, lots of people to get to the point that we could say with confidence that we can do about 94.5% of identifications. When plant materials age, the characteristics that botanists use to identify the plants disappear. So it's just confounded by age. The defining characteristics have been taken off when you process them to make the beautiful textiles that we make with them. And as they're older, that's another reason why it's hard to tell if it's harakeke or tikoka. Leaf material age does not look like new leaf material either. So the materials get a patina that changes everything about them. So anyway, that's what it looked like when it arrived. We macerate the leaf down and it's tiny little white ultimate fibres, and then we look at them under the polarising light microscope. And I just put a slide of harakeke, tikoka and kia. They all behave differently in the light, and the fibres look a little bit different. I won't talk any more about this, but there's a lot of information available on our website, and it was harakeke. I could talk for hours, sorry, Donna. And Hokimati Harwood, who's a very talented and amazing resource in New Zealand, was able to identify, and also she had to go through the processes to be able to bring the feathers back too. And she was able to say that there were kahu and kereru and, of course, some kaka feathers. So we thank Hokimati very much for all of her hard work as well. Your turn. You're talking about the words.
Oh, okay. I'm talking about the words. Yeah. When weavers make something with it and weave a space in their work, we had historically named that term puariari. And as we worked with te rā, and it was Donna actually who was told by a linguist.
It was Te Kahotu who told me.
Oh, yes. Yeah. Te Kahotu Maxwell said to Donna that puariari was the wrong terminology for this type of mahi. So we talked about that, and I had a conversation with him, and I said, well, come up with a new word for us. And he said, ask Derek Lardelli. So I asked Derek Lardelli, and for the weaving pattern that goes through there, Derek gave us the term awamātangi. So there's a kukuhau that we're using as our descriptive for what we see on te rā. Yeah. And awa mātangi, because of the awa, the shape of the pattern, but the mātangi to allow the breeze to flow through it. And what we have discovered on our journey is when te rā is moving, you can see the awa mātangi expanding and the weave closing. So it's quite incredible, really. But we were really fortunate to be able to now refer to that as awa mātangi rather than puariari as we were previously. We also asked Derek for some kōrero about papa ki raro, and I rang Edna, who's sitting in the audience, and said to her, Edna, is there another terminology for papa ki raro? And she said, not that I know of, or something like that. But thank you, Edna, because it's, it's about searching and asking what is it that we're going to refer to these parts of te rā as. And so I went back to Tā Derek and said, okay, here's another one, and talked about it. And he came up with rei oro rangi for the top of the sail and rei oro nuku for the bottom of the sail. Rei being in the form of a tooth shape, oro for sound, and rangi because it's at the top, and nuku because it's towards papatua nuku. So, and the loops on the side of te rā, and there's 13 papa, and on each side of those papa there is a loop. And Derek come up with Te Herea Maui, which is a fantastic name for them. And I can see that our waka experts down here like those names. Now, this is only so that we can refer in Māori terminology to what we're finding on te rā. We're not giving te rā a new name or new titles. What we're trying to do is offer some ideas that inspire the next generation of weavers to have a go. And our friends in the far north, Te Ringa Raupā, they've got their own terminology, and that's fine. Yeah. But for te rā, we wanted something, a descriptive, that we could use to explain what we're seeing on te rā. Kia ora. Kia
ora. So the research also looking at the weave construction. So over the years that we've been working on this project, we had wānanga bringing all those hearts and minds and hands together to kōrero to talk about how we do this, but the construction, the hiki was challenging for us. The movement of the awa mātangi through the join of the papa was very challenging for us. And it takes it takes more than one person to try and figure these things out. Like Jack said yesterday, it is very sophisticated weaving. And I just want to address that just a tiny little bit. Our weaving today is also very sophisticated. So just saying. I mean, we're informed by the taonga of our tupuna, but there's so many weavers today who are innovating and creating and are highly sophisticated in design and application. So thanks, Jack, for letting me, allowing the space for me to say that. Anyway, so, bringing everybody together because it's not a one-person job, as our friends in Northland know. The more minds and hearts and hands that come together. So these are just some shots of the close-ups. So the ways to document this, we want to be able to have these techniques documented so that anybody, any weaver, can look at the documentation, and because remembering that we didn't think, well, not that we didn't think te rā was coming, but we were told it was highly improbable, which means a chance. So we were kind of operating on the slimmest of chances. So we wanted to record absolutely everything. And in order for weavers to be able to engage with, I mean, as a weaver, I work directly with the harakeke, and then that tells me its story and I tell it my story, like, do this. And then the harakeke says to me, no, I want to do this. And so as weavers, we're very famous for being control freaks. Oh no, I'm just speaking for myself. Because we actually have a relationship with our material and we allow it to be how it is, but we still need it to do what we need it to do. So in order to document, so this is part of the process, I just want to thank Hectorina for, where is she? Hectorina for her methodical approach to this. And so this is her work. So also in that documentation process to provide illustrations with an intention to animate, so that there's lots of different ways for people to engage, you know, not just one way.
And our wonderful illustrator is...
Aroha Mitchell is in the audience somewhere. So thank you, Aroha, for your expertise. So we also, in the project, employed researchers to be able to look for the provenance or look for archival information about sails, about the nature of sails, the shape of sails across Polynesia. I think that's another project in that to look at the comparison of Polynesian sails, and the sailors talked a little bit about that yesterday. So do you want to talk a little bit about our research?
Sure. I mean, we really wanted to try to find out who had deposited te rā in the British Museum, and that stuff in contemporary museums we keep really good records, but there's taonga all over the world that we do not know how it got in those places. And there's always been an apocryphal, well, this artefact has been talked about as being collected by Cook. It's published in lots of places. And, of course, you know, everybody wants to find out that Cook collected stuff. And we used some really amazing researchers to pore over journals, not just of Cook, but other people, early European explorers. We know that sailors are always interested in each other's kit. We know European sailors wanted to get their hands on Māori sailors' stuff. You know, I think it's kind of like a boy thing, kicking tyres at car shows, that kind of stuff. Is it? Well, some boys I know do that. So, you know, obviously it was of interest, but we wanted to know who it was. We couldn't find... So Ross Kelman did a huge amount of archival research for us. So thank you very much, Ross. Hours and hours and hours and hours and hours of work. Looking at illustrations of sails, depictions, European depictions, and you can see the really characteristic shape that te rā has is being depicted by lots of people. So it's clearly a type of sail that was very prominent in the late 18th century when European people arrived. And in fact, the earliest depiction of contact with Māori, I've forgotten the name of that drawing.
The sporing, is it?
No, that's the sporing one up the top, but earlier than that. Is it Abel Tasman?
Oh, yeah.
Gelsomans. There's actually a very small rā in that as well. So these rā have been around for a long time.
Yeah.
We had Jeanette Wakairo doing some provenance research as well. And then we got in trouble with COVID because nobody could go to London. So we employed a really amazing young woman called Polly Bence, who used to work at the British Museum. So again, records. We haven't gotten much further. We cannot say definitively how te rā got into the British Museum. Julie has a great theory.
Yeah. I love that theory.
And I think you should talk to her about it. She likes to talk about the possibility of Tupaia because he would have been a person of mana to gift te rā to. and it would have been of incredible interest to him as well. And then he, passed away, and his taonga were distributed, and that may be a way and a reason why we're not finding it in the European accounts as well. So thanks, Julie. I think that's a really ripper of an idea. We also really wanted to take lots of images. I can see Donna's moving me on. Wanted to take lots of images because we wanted that documentation if anything ever happened to Te Rā. And so we worked with a crew called Cultural Heritage Imaging, who are famous internationally they image temples. They do all this amazing stuff. And so the British Museum agreed to let them come, and they had to build special equipment to do it, and we'll just show you. And is Michael O'Neill here from Te Papa?
Yeah, he was here yesterday.
Just also want to shout out to Michael, who went over and really helped us. So Te Papa have also helped us a great deal.
So I'll just
another bit of a snippet.
Just a couple of quick real, because there's voiceovers on this which I don't think may match. We just wanted to show the process of this photogrammetry. Te Rā was laying on the ground.
So
they built a
gurney,
a boom kind of thing, to run the camera along each section. Thousands and thousands of photographs were taken. I'm not going to play the clip because I've forgotten the numbers that we were supposed to.
So you can see it's not easy. There are lots of people involved.
Yeah.
The heating broke down at the store. Everyone was wearing parkas. It was freezing.
Yeah.
We're still out in Shoreditch. Images of every part of the surface, back and front.
Yeah.
This is to be able to make a three-dimensional imaging using photogrammetry of Te Rā. It's also to do reflectance transformation imaging, which is a mathematical modelling process that uses light at different angles to try to get more depth of field. You can't see inside, but you get more idea of the three-dimensionality of the sail. Very, very high resolution. We got sent all these images, and because we're not imaging technicians, we thought we could just plop them up on the website and everybody could use them. You can't do that. It was 2 terabyte of stuff, and my computer crashed. So Te Papa and Michael O'Neill have been helping us to try to make those available to everyone. So they're coming. But if you show the next slide, Donna, I think we've got a picture. Oh, yeah. So we're working with another person called Dylan Mulder.
Yep.
And so we're preparing to get these images up on the website. But the touch screens in the exhibition space are a result of all of this work too. So all of the stuff that's surrounding Te Rā comes from the hard work of others.
Yeah.
We'll just show you what it kind of looks like. So it's not perfect. It's really hard to match both sides of Te Rā together because the feathers make...
Yeah, once you flip Te Rā over, the feathers move. And so to bring the imaging of both sides together is impossible.
And so there's been a lot of work done at Christchurch City Art Gallery as well to stitch those images together to make those beautiful images. So big shout out to the photographer here.
So you can get really quite up close, and I know that, you know, we're all, as weavers, interested in the hemming, the edge, but, you know, we thought that we'd be able to see how the edge was finished through this process, but we just haven't got there yet. Do you think we might get there?
Well, it just shows different depths. So you know, you'll be able to say, well, there's got to be something inside this.
Yeah.
But there's still a lot more work to be done to get the images into a place where everybody can access them. And
so you can see here the two sides that don't
match quite. And this is very low resolution, so we can play around with it in a presentation.
Yeah.
So watch this space. Go back to the website. We'll get there eventually. None of us are tech giants. I don't know if you can tell that. Like even
it's
Facebook.
Amazing we could just do this.
Yeah, this is
I'm very proud of that. Yeah. It was pretty good. Yeah. So our project 2 was around gathering information from sailors who know what they're talking about getting waka on the water and making them go fast and making them go places. And so how could we be working with sail technology without talking to sailors? Did you want to add anything to that, Donna?
Yes, I do. The first thing that I did when I came home from the British Museum after the first visit and seeing a part of Te Rā was I went up to visit Heck Busby, and I talked to him and asked him about it. He knew about it, but he didn't know about how the sail was constructed or what it was. And he was quite keen for us to go ahead and find out more. So we interviewed Heck, and although his photo's not up here, it was prior to us filming the interviews. And he said every question he answered, "Oh, I don't know," and then he'd tell me what he thought it was. And then the next question, "Oh, I don't know." But yeah, it was wonderful to talk to him and just get a feel of what he thought it might be. And he only had photos to go on. And it was like Hotu said yesterday, they only had photos when we talked to them. And now that they've seen the real thing, they're starting to think more deeply and further about what it means to have those the awamatangi and all the other pieces on the sail. Yeah.
And Hotu, are you in here, Hotu? Oh, he's gone home. Anyway, he is always talking about when are you fellas going to come on the waka? You know, so if you're doing this mahi, then when are you coming on the waka? My answer to him is always, I can't swim very well. His answer to me is always, you're not going to fall out. And so, but his kōrero, I think, you know, it has real synergy, because if we, you know, if weavers can experience what it is like to be on a waka, and then also for sailors to experience what it takes to create a taonga like this, you know, then that's when the building and innovation of new knowledge happens. You know, when we come together from different spaces and places to come together to innovate, you know. So yes, Hotu, you're not here, but one day he'll get me on that waka. So this is where we are today. Te Rā is here, and we left that on the bottom there, return to the British Museum, we left that there for Julie. Just as public record, it's up there. So really it was the building of relationships, the open hearts of the people at the British Museum. Oh, we're going. Oh, no, we are. We're going to go. The open hearts of the people at the British Museum. Also, I think I can say, without being too whakahihi, our tenacity and our belief that Te Rā could come home. And actually a belief that why not? Yeah. Why can't Te Rā come home? And so we just really lived in that space. And our research supported that as well. And so everything, just by the way, this is a publicly funded project, everything that all of the information that we have gathered, all of the documentation will be given to the British Museum as well, so to put into their records as part of their archives. We're planning to write a book when life slows down, but that will never happen, but the book will. And so we just wanted to, do you want to add something before we go on to the journey home?
I want to add that we've got a mistake up there, because Te Rā is going to Tāmaki for 8 months, Nigel, or 9 even. So I thought it was only 3 months. So we all get Te Rā for longer, which is pretty awesome.
That's cool. Yeah. And actually, I just need to say, like talking to Hinikura yesterday, talking about what if Te Rā had never left? What would it look like for contemporary waka today? Would they all have woven sails? I mean, you know, these dreams of that mātauranga Māori never having left this place, what would waka sails look like today? When we're talking with the sailors, they talked about that the mauri that's missing on contemporary waka are woven sails. And I think that that's something really amazing that we can work towards making happen. So bringing Te Rā back for us, one of the major concerns for us was that people get to engage with Te Rā up close and personal, that they get to feel the textile, they get to see the fineness. If we had negotiated to bring Te Rā home to put an exhibition, then we might as well have just written a book. And so to be able to convince, cajole, pati, and get this community engagement, or wānanga, was just such an amazing, beautiful experience for the people that came, but also for us to be able to stand around and talk to people about what do we think this was, and why do you think the triangles are at the top, why is this, why is this, why is this. One of the wonderful things about our research is that we went in with lots of answers, and of course, as Ranui said, some of them were proved wrong, some of them were proved right, but research is about not knowing the answer when you begin, and we've actually come out with more questions than answers, which is awesome. But what we know is that our tūpuna genius is trying to tell us what we need to know. And so this is Jade Hadfield. So she's a Māori conservator that is based in Melbourne. So we brought her over for the initial, for the installation.
But
right?
also
as
Jade
well
went
as,
to London as
that's
well.
That's right, yeah. With
so the Minister,
Kanawa.
Creative New Zealand.
Yep.
We got more funding, so thank you very much, Creative New Zealand, because we really wanted to make sure that Māori conservators got to work on te rā.
Yeah.
So Rangi Te Kanawa and Jade travelled to London, helped talk about mounting, worked very hard at repairing sections of te rā, trying to figure out how to pack te rā. Like, that sounds easy, but actually transporting a very fragile, large, older taonga all that way to sit in the back of house at freight, customs, because you don't get to put te rā in the top bit. So somebody has to be with te rā the whole time. So you have to have a really robust crate that protects te rā.
We've got some pictures of
that. Oh, that's coming up.
Yep.
But so we had Jade and Rangi in London, so sacrificing their lives and their families for 2 weeks to do that.
Yep.
And then we were able, through that amazing and very generous funding, to bring them for the wānanga as well. So Edna McCann, who's again based in London.
We'll see some pictures of
Jade Hadfield, and Rangi again was there.
Edna is in Australia.
Edna is in Australia.
Yeah. So we've got, there's Edna there in the black on that side. There's Edna. So she's based in Melbourne as well. So this is the community engagement. I keep saying to Catherine, is this like a conservator's nightmare? Like,
no, not the right kind of conservators, actually. It's not like, at all.
Yeah, just that was kind of a joke.
Good.
She still doesn't get my jokes after all this time. Anyway, but I just, was thinking about the handling, the handling of the taonga. It was really beautiful that people were able to do that.
Yeah, so thanks again to the British Museum, to Julie, who's done this before.
To the Christchurch Art Gallery.
Yeah.
I mean, like, even going in the back of the museum, back of the gallery and up through into the lab, that's an experience in itself. Not many of us get to experience what it's like behind the scenes of an art gallery or a museum. And so we had, I think I've got the stats there, but, like these faces and these hands they just say it all. This little guy, double magnifying glass, so he could see even more. Really important, we thought too, for, especially for weavers, to be able to come and look at where the mātauranga is on the back or the front. Is there ever a back or a front? But on the side that has the most information, for weavers to be able to look really closely at the weave. And just everyone who walked in was blown away by the fineness, like you've seen te rā out there. Lots of visitors.
Can I just say too, so we negotiated with the British Museum to turn te rā once a day so people could come and see the front and the back.
Yeah.
Now, you can imagine that it's not the easiest thing in the world to turn a big, fragile taonga. So Nicole Rode, who we also need to acknowledge, who's the conservative from the British Museum, who's had to come home, she devised a 17-step process for 7 conservators to turn te rā. And this is a conservator's nightmare. Everybody stood in the lab and watched us do that for an hour. So it's all very well touching and handling. We just don't want people to see us if we're going to muck anything up. Yeah. So that in itself is a lot of care and time. Yeah. But it was really important for people travelling that way to get to see the front and the back.
Yes, absolutely. Yep. And so...
and I'm just going to add in here.
Okay.
And the people who stayed to watch that process really appreciated it. They were actually in awe of the way that the British Museum had thought out and designed a way to turn te rā with such respect. And many of them said so in their comments.
So we're just going to, I've got a couple of slides of the travelling of te rā to Aotearoa. And so, Ranui, can I hand over to you what's happening in these?
We're in the British Museum, and te rā, the bottom end of te rā has been rolled and the top end has been stabilised in this crate. And there you can, with her back to us, you can see Nicole, who's fixing in a piece of pounamu that I wanted to put in at the last minute because I'd forgotten to take a piece of greenery, put on the top of the box as te rā left the British Museum. So I had a piece of pounamu on, so I put that in instead, and it travelled home with te rā. Now this is the lid on, and as you can see, Joe is there. Joe, we thank Joe very, very much, Joe, deeply from our hearts, because you took care of the tikanga for us, and that was, and we appreciate that. Thank you.
There's Jill.
So Joe and Jill there, and Kahu. And Kahu kept popping up, which was great. She was over there on another kaupapa, her and her cousin, and they turned up at the British Museum, and then we just expected her to be around us all the time, which she was.
Did you want to mention the weight of the crate?
Oh, maybe, yes. Now that the crate is closed, the weight of the crate was 276 kilograms, and te rā weighs just under 5 kilograms. So you can see the care and attention that has been given to ensuring that te rā was packed perfectly and safely to arrive here in Aotearoa. And there it is being loaded on to the back of the truck at the British Museum. And on the other side, we're in Heathrow cargo area, where it's going to be palleted, ready for transporting home.
She didn't know I put this in. Safety first.
That one speaks for itself.
Yeah.
Us in our hobnail boots at, yeah.
And so this is here at the
This is
the
here,
gallery, eh?
This is here at the gallery, and it's going from the conservatory area down into where it's exhibited.
So just some images of the beginning of the installation process, moving down to the exhibition space. Is it? Yeah, it's moving, isn't it? It's not in there.
On the move.
Yeah. Being called through into the exhibition space. The conservators. I think that might be the last one, actually. Oh, a couple of close-ups.
Just a shout out to the amazing people on the exhibition, from Jamie, who designed the Simply Superb mount, to Sean, who led the exhibition team. Stunning people to work with, a beautiful, beautiful vibe in the room, incredibly respectful, could do anything. And, yeah, I'm very, very grateful to them for all of the love and attention they paid to us and to make the space look so absolutely beautiful.
It does.
And this is attaching te rā to the mount with tiny little stainless steel entomology pins covered in silicone sheathing through the void areas. A lot of time, a lot of caving torches, I don't know what they're called, and a little bit of nylon net covers the feathers to hold them in place, hand-stitched onto the textile covering the mount, and that was the most terrifying bit, because if we'd put a hole in the textile, we would have had to have taken everything off and recovered the mount. So that was the probably right at the end is the bit that if we stuffed it up, it would have just created mayhem. But anyway, that's the install process.
Yeah, and I think...
Oh,
yeah, and so we do want to acknowledge all of the people that have been part of this project. it couldn't have happened without any of them.
We wanted to shout out to our whānau because
yeah.
a lot of our family members had to sacrifice a lot, our children, our grandchildren, our wives and husbands. We got to spend a lot of time together, but it meant that the people that we love had to be sacrificed, and I want to really acknowledge all of that. We also want to acknowledge...
we wanted also a shout out to our weaving mates, Te Ropuringa Raupā. I mean, they've been working tirelessly across these last few years as well, creating replicas, recreating te rā. They're at the point in their research, I'm just talking for you fellas, but the point in their research that they're disseminating the techniques as well. So that's a really beautiful thing. So congratulations to them as well.
Thank you for all of your beautiful work.
Yeah, thank you for all your beautiful work. And we're really excited about what's happening in that space as well. And we really look forward to some possible future collaborations. So, yeah. Did you want to add anything else?
No, I think you've done a fabulous job.
Okay, so, Okay, so questions, we'll have a sit down and then if you've got any questions, feel free.
Haere tonu, hoi anō, e tuake nei ki te mihi. E paku mihi rungi ia koutou e ngā marae kura. O koutou nei tino mahi, e whāriki hia kei mui a tātou o mōhiotanga e pāna ki te taonga I runga I tōna hokinga mai ki Aotearoa te rā. Ngā mihi rā ki a koto.
Kia ora. Kia ora, Jack.
Ko tai nei mātou ki te wā e hoki ana ki ngā kainga. Hoi anō, e tika ana ki a mātou ki te mihi atu rā ki a koutou, ara ki tō tātou nei taonga. Ki a hau, e huri au ki te reo hokoporao, mō taku nei whakahūtu ki tō kōrero I roto nei. Thank you for this morning. We do have to leave. I just wanted to make a little correction for my nephew up there, Te Atiwai. His actual name is Riri Nui.
Yeah. Hapai.
Just to correct that part. Yeah. But I think just in terms of my use of the word sophistication as well. I think. I think the comment was made when I was talking about how people were viewed as being Stone Age, and I think the comment came out about the high sophistication of the work that was shown within Te Rā, that actually upholds that our people were at the highest level of their technology at that time. Just a slight little
tweak. Okay, I take it.
And I tēnei wako huri au ki a koutou no Ingarangi, hei te British Museum, mō tino manaakitanga ki te taonga, ara ki ngā wahine toa, I runga I tō rātou nei haerenga ki kaireira ki te tiki mai o tātou nei tino taonga. So thank you very much for allowing Te Rā to come back. Aroha mai, but ko wātea mai nei mātou. No hora mai.
Thank you so much.
I want to sing a song. This is a waiata. It's called Te Ori o Te Kōmata o Te Rangi. And so it's a waiata based on Te Waka o Tamarereti. And if you know how the waka is set up, there are two rā, one called Kaipātiki and one called Piawai. And ngā rā ka pōhia e te hau. Tātaia mai rā urua o te waka o tamarereti, whakaihu te mataua maui, tiki a taranga, hi ake ai te ikaroa, te upoko te atua, ko te putahi nui o e hua, koroi ho koroi ake, Piti kina mai te taura ko mahutonga te punga ki arangi ui,
Mātai whakarunga, ko marere o tonga, whakararo e tama, ko maria, ko rua wahia, te kōmata o te rangi ki, Hawaii ki. Noho hia te takere nui o te waka ko kaipa, tiki ko pia wairara, ka pōhia te hau ko waira te tangata, ko atu tahi mata mua ki runga, pia tata mai ko takurua puhai hai ki raro, ki te noho hangari ki te taurapa ko tautoru, ko puanga te tau o te urue. Kumea te hoe taumata kuku, te kakau o te hoe koa. Kumea te hoe akina, te hoe urungi, tā kiri tamanui. Ko matariki ngā puapua, ko matariki a hunga nui, ko matariki te tohu o te tau, ko te tahi o pipiri e tama e koki.
Kia ora. Kia ora. Kia ora. Kia ora, Christine. Beautiful to see you. Tēnā koe.
I kite au I te āhuatanga tino a tāhua nei, marunga I nā kura, kahu, ko te era momo nihome ki. How te taki mo tērā, me tōna a tāhua hoki, kia mā pango. Kei runga I nā kura o te kahu, kei te Rereoro rangi. Reioro.
So let me speak that back and you can tell me if I got what you said, eh? That you're asking about, are you asking about the triangles on the top or the feathers?
The actual little nickel on the feathers.
Oh, yeah.
On the spine of the feathers, how they give a beautiful pattern.
Softness and, yeah. Well, I think Ruth touched on that yesterday as well, like why, you know. So we've talked a lot about that and talked about that, you know, to split the feathers to allow that softness so that the feather's not stiff, but also that the notching also softens that. Like if you split a feather straight up through its vein or, you know, the quill, it's still quite stiff. And so that notching process allows even more movement, like, you know, rather than just kind of that, it allows that. Yeah, that's what we think. Yeah. That's what we think. Yeah. Tino tāhua. And very intricate as well.
Yes.
Very intricate, yeah.
That's what I was wondering. How would they have done that? Would they have used some tuhua? Because it's so precise and little.
What's that weaver's name? Colin. What's that weaver's name that does the fine jewellery? Matthew. Yeah, Matthew. Yeah, so when Matthew was here, we were talking about that, and he talked about that. He thought that it was made by just fingernails.
Oh.
And so, of course, the feathers fit like a zip because they're split in the halves. Of course, they fit together because they're two halves, right? And when you're right up close with it, you can see how some of the feathers are still together at the end, and they're just split like sort of up, and the bottom of the quill is still together. So you can see how the feathers fit together. We've had lots of speculation about obsidian, and, you know, we've kind of attacked them with scalpels, and but scalpels never really did the job either. And I'm sure that Ruth can probably talk about what they were using to do that. So, you know, you can ask her too later. But, yeah, well, that's what we think it is. It's a wind factor, wind direction, sound of the sound. Yeah.
Oh, tēnā koutou.
We can still only, Christine, we can still only speculate as well.
Yeah.
That's exciting.
Tēnā koe, Donna.
That lady that asked all the questions. Kia ora koutou. We often talk about our natural fibres, muka and harakeke, taking up the Māori of, the weaver, and we can see that in the DNA. I'm curious about with a taonga as old as te rā, whether scientifically, Catherine, you've been able to see evidence of any of that, or more particularly, if there is evidence that it was ever actually used. Was there salt? Was there, wind particles? Was there other
We haven't done
elements?
We haven't done any anything to check salt. I mean, one of the things about taonga being in the museum, any museum, is that they're treated often with not very nice things to reduce the impact of pests. So, sometimes taonga can't be touched because of arsenic and other things that are covering them because of hundreds of years of old pest control. So sometimes that makes it very hard to chemically analyse plant materials. But there's definitely use wear on te rā. If you go into the space and look at the bottom, you can see where the tension has caused breaks along the bottom edge, from the difference of using the toda and being held in one place. And, there are other areas all over te rā where you can see evidence of use. There's some kokowai on the surface of te rā.
We think
it's kokowai. I mean, one of the things about being in a museum for a long time and maybe being wrapped around other artefacts or with other artefacts have those materials been transferred in that way.
Or was it from somebody's body?
Exactly.
A body?
So there's still many, many things that we could do to understand more about te rā using forms of analysis, including provenancing, to try to find out where the plant materials that made te rā are from.
And as science technology moves on, will you be able to go sort of further and further into that molecular kind of level and perhaps being able to find something that helps with the provenance from the environmental, would have been used environmentally at that time?
I'm not sure about the environmental aspect in terms of there is the technology available to undertake stable isotope analysis to provenance. I'm sure everyone's heard about that for teeth, that you can tell where people grew up or travelled. And these are from countries where they have mapped every inch of the motu. And I believe we've gotten to that stage in New Zealand now. When we first started doing this work, there wasn't the underlying information to relate the plant to the soil it was grown in. And we did some proof of concept stuff about 7 years ago to see if isotope analysis could tell us where across New Zealand harakeke had been grown. And we tested one cultivar across 8 locations using the Rene Orchiston collection, and you could tell the difference then. But what we didn't have is that comparative information about the soil of New Zealand, every inch of it, so that if there's a piece from the British Museum, that we can match it that way. So now I believe that we're at the state, we can do that, and we would like to do that at some point, yeah.
Thank you for continuing to reveal the number of layers of story. There's still lots of story left.
Oh my God, so much story.
Kia ora koutou.
Thank you.
Tēnā tātou, tūtai ake, tautoko ngā mihi ko mihia, kia koutou, te toko toru nei, i ngā kōrero nui, ngā kōrero whakahirahira. Kia mātou i tēnei rā. Kei te mihi. It's not really a question, but I do want to congratulate you on top of the congratulations to you for your kōrero this morning, and that's around the use or finding out some kupu hou for this mahi, because I think that's really important. It's important to me, and I think so my ears pricked up when you talked about the puariare, the puariare that I know, like on that kite there. I don't really need to know this now, but I'm just curious on why that wasn't accepted as being a term for the rā, and I was pondered on that for a bit, and thinking that there was always a tikanga for whatever, however the rā was made, there was a tikanga why there was those puariwari, those holes that went in that direction, why there were the niho on the sides. So rather than them having a name in the first place, it was the function, and then the reo will come after, or name put to it, or that might be us in our colonised minds putting names to things. But in terms of what you've done here, I think it's really important and really significant. I'll go and talk to Derek and unwrap some of these kupu here. But I just think that's wonderful what you've done there. And in terms of, us figuring it all out and doing tauiras and all that, we can use these terms. It's not a new thing to do, to put names to things. And I look at it and I think, it's relating to our atua. So instead of saying, should we do the holes now? Should we make those triangles now?
Yeah.
We can actually be increasing our own reo. So it is, the whole revitalisation of te reo. So I think that's wonderful. I did miss what the mātairangi was, though.
I'll leave that. Kia ora kouhai.
Yeah.
I'll just give you a bit of background. Te Kahotu said to me, why are you fellas using that name, puariare? And I'm like, because that's the name that we know. And he said, but that word means ripped or tetere or holy or worn out. He said, that's not an appropriate name for a taonga such as that. And so thus began the journey of, let's see if there is another term. And exactly what you said, Kari, about, make the thing and then the name will come. And that when Derek looked at that, looked at the function of those spaces, his term that he gifted, to te rā, for us as awamātangi, the flow of the wind through those spaces. And so that's sort of a little bit of whakapapa of that kōrero, that name.
I was going to ask that too. Was it wrongly sort of named in the first place?
No.
No, I don't
Nothing's
think so.
wrong.
Nothing's wrong. Nothing's wrong.
Depends on your interpretation of that kupu at that time.
Yeah.
Because there are other meanings like for Guare about opening up as opposed to we've just been
shutting down
about it. Yeah, as opposed to being worn out and to be mere.
Yeah.
But I think we also talked about innovation and the full projection of our art form, that we need to be looking at, how do we wordsmith these things so that we're ever moving forward as opposed to just being stuck in the past because we keep being told we are. Just for cuddle.
So our reo is evolving as well as the art form.
Kia ora. Well, thank you for that. So the mātairangi has been talked about as another wind director or a thing. And I was talking to Ritini yesterday. He's a steerer on the waka, and he thought it's about, because if you're a steerer at the back, that's your indicator of where the wind's coming from, because as a steerer you can't see anything in front of you, and if the sail is there you can't see anything. So you have to have different indicators. And the sailors talked yesterday about they have streamers on the sails that they use today, and that gives them wind direction. So if the mātairangi is like maybe coming this way and you need it to be going that way, then you move the sail around. This is me trying to be a sailor. You move the sail so that it catches the wind in the direction. It tells you you're going in the right direction. So that's the easiest kind of explanation that I can give. So another wind indicator. Because if you think about it, imagine if you're down here and the sail is up there, the top of the sail is up there. So you can't tell what the wind is doing way up there because you can't feel it. So you need all these other directive indicators, like the feathers, like the mātairangi, like the
rei oro.
The rei oro. So you need all these other technologies to tell you you're going in the right direction. And, it really is technology. Ecological technology, it's total tupuna genius. We get to see, how the understanding that our tupuna had of their environment is all embodied in that taonga.
Kia ora. I'm just interested, you just mentioned the presence of kokowai, and I was wondering how deep into the fibre it is. Is it saturated, does it go right through, or is it just sitting on the surface?
Don't know. We haven't done. That's such an Aussie thing to say. Sorry, we're not sure. Well, all we can see, we haven't taken samples with kokowai on it, so we'll have to have a look.
Awesome.
We'll have to sample from the place, scrape a bit off, all of the things.
Is it over the entire, just parts of it?
Just
around.
Yeah.
Oh,
next
cool.
project, Tisa.
Excellent.
Next layer to reveal.
Thank you.
Thanks, Tisa.
Awesome pātai. Kia ora, Ruth.
E rāringa raupa, tō koutou hoa no te tai tokero, ngā mihi nunui ki a koutou. Tēnō nunui tō koha ki te ao, ki te ao o hene te iwa, ki te wharipura, ko te tai ao, ko te ao, completely. So really big congratulations to you, because we've seen you at some of our presentations, but we've never been privileged enough to be at one of yours. So to be able to view what you've been working hard at and the rangahau that you've been doing is just amazing to see. So just incredible, your mahi, and the way it kind of dovetails into what we've been doing as well. So just congratulations. I was just overawed yesterday to be in the presence of Te Rā again. It's my third visit with her, and they just get more and more beautiful. And it's an incredible feat of the collaboration with yourselves who initiated the whole project, and the British Museum and Auckland Museum to help this momentous, unexpected event to happen. And the ripples that just having that beautiful taonga whakahira back i te whenua o Aotearoa. We don't know how that will play out, but it's awesome. So kia ora.
Kia ora, kia ora.
Te toko toko I whenuku, te toko toko I wherangi, toki atu ki a ko te mumu, ko te awha, ko te mumu, ko te awha, ko te manehi kai o ta tākire pana pana kara, I runga kara, I raro ka whai tā more, I runga ka whai tā more, I raro tēnā ko te pau, tēnā ko te pau, te pau o rongo, no rongo Māori, ora, aoa e.
That's why I want to forward the whole of the reason.
Tēnā koutou.
Tamai I here pātai.
Hoi no, kia ora tātou. Kei te tautoko ki ngā kōrero hore ake nei. Hoi no he tāpiri atu ki etahi mātaurana e pāna mo te rā nei. So Donna was talking about use of te rā with rūtene. And Tamahau Tanitu, the other waka kai hautu, also talked about when you actually load that waka and it's been channeled through by the winds using the sails, you actually have to think about how the surface of the waka sits on the water, because sometimes if you load it up too much, especially at the front, it could dive because of the strength of the wind catching the sails. So what they would tend to do is load the waka backwards so that it moves along the water like that, with a sail like that in mind. I think the other thing, just as I came in, I heard a discussion around identification of maybe where these the fibres and textiles might have come from, because whilst Joe and I went over to France in 2012, along with Sir Derek Lardelli, to repatriate Tipuna Māori back from the Kibron Museum. That actual discussion came up from French scientists to say that, look, if they could identify, if they were using DNA analysis to tell you where the actual person came from, what waters they came from, what waters they drank from within Aotearoa. So that was a discussion that we had back in 2012, whilst we repatriated all the toimoko from within France. But that took an act of parliament. They had to move an act of parliament within their French government to allow that to happen. And so that discussion took place in 2003, and it wasn't until 2012 that everything was brought together and brought back. So with that mātauranga and kōrero, that's sitting with the repatriation committee of Te Papa Tongarewa to share to te iwi Māori if they want to do that. But the other thing also that Joe raised yesterday was the inclusion of our matakite to add to the discourse of our tipuna Māori. So I think there's a whole lot of paradigms that happen with our taonga Māori being overseas, and then all the information that's coming back to feed into the wealth and the knowledge that's given here. So, kia ora.
Kia ora. Looks like we're going to France.
Kia ora tātou. Tautoko atu nā mihi a Tamahau. Yeah, I was fortunate to be over there with Tamahau and Sir Derek to repatriate those taonga. And it was we attended a science conference. They had a panel, and one of the scientists said they'd have the technology soon to be able to take a hair off one of the toimoko and understand the water catchment that those particular taonga came from. I also remember a kōrero, it was one of the French senators here, one of the French wahines senators, that said to her fellow ministers, the heartbeat of these taonga is New Zealand. We must bring it back to New Zealand. And I heard that there was some kōrero yesterday about the possibility of it being brought back to New Zealand, if we can keep that in mind. There was kōrero about, wouldn't it be wonderful to get that sail outside and feel the breeze of Tāwhiri Mātea, and I think it's part of the reason why we've got this terrible weather in Christchurch today is he tohu, aroha. Wa hoki mai te taonga is back here where it belongs. Tēnā tātou.
Ko raki e tū, ko papa e takoto. Ka te tiro ki uta, ki Rainui, ki tika teko aurunga, ki auraki, tatu mai rā ki o tautahi nei. Kia mihi ake rā ki aratine o rapu vai, hāwea, waitaha, hotu mā moi ngai tahu, tēnā koutou. Aku mai tāku no taura po te waka nei no muri heku. He ko timana he airihi tēnei kua toru te koutou. E whai ake rai te ao Māori hei āwhina hei tautoko. Nō reira, kei aku nui, kei aku rahi, tēnei ka mihi kawaki. Ke tautoko atu i ngā mihi kua mihia. He kaupapa whakahira rawa atu tēnei. Kia tika, ke mihi ake ki oku tino kai ako I roto I te wharepora. Ko koe tēnā rānui. o hekenga i a ngai tahu i a ngā te mutunga toko maru Aotea kura haupo te kāhui maunga. Tau parata tai ake rā ki tērā kuia o Te Aue Davis i taua wā o Maniapoto. Ka umai tā koutou toko toru ki Wakatiku. Kātahi kārua tā mātou i Otipoti ko raka hurihia Cameron o te whānau a Apanui. Ana tōna pānga ki Māori Nui ki Lakiula ki te au, ki tērā whānau. Ka toru ki tā koutou nei whanaunga ko Daphne O'Connell kei tā wāhi nei e horehia tērā kaupapa o te wahakura. Ana, ka huri ki te kāhui maunga ki rua taranaki i te matinga o te ru wharihoka. Ka noho tahi tēnei ki tō koutou whanaunga o Puketira ki ko Tanya Todd. Nā i mahi te kākahu mō te ru wharihoka i tōna tangi ki Parihaka. Nō reira, kui e taku iti e mihi kawake rā ki a koutou akurahi. Ka hoki ki te kōrero mo te Māori. Ka tai ake te Māori ki Otipoti. Ko te tangata whakahaere kaupapa i reira mō ngā iwi tā mātou ki toga ko pau huata. Ka hoki ki tērā whare o mātātua i tōna hoki ngā tuki whakatāne ki te mānuka tūtahi. Ka pau huata nō e whakahaere ana te hoki ngātu o tō koutou taonga ki reira. Ka huri ki tēnei tā ki a koe tamahau, ki a tūhoi, ki tō poroporo a ki a Richard Nuns i tērā tau. Ka whakaaro ki tēnei ki tōku haerenga miharo ki maunga pohatu. Ka whitu tau ki mua, ka tūtaki mātou, ki hema, ki makerini, ki toka me wērātu o koutou karangatanga o tamakai moana. Nō reira, tēnei e tū wiri nei, nō reira me tīkina atu e he waiata o te maunga tito e hei whakakapi tēnā tātou. E re re rā te motu nei ki roto ko ia o pari aka nā tō urai waka aere mai ngā tikanga i tere pai ai te motu nei tō piki tanga kei te pure poto e ke tanga kei toro anui ki a wakarongo ko e ki tere ka mai o te kōrero ei. Mātou tonu au ki a koe e tōu e te ngā kaua ka puke tonu mea a ia rā e mauru e ko te au ka weru waka mō motu e iu ana kei te uru e kei te tonga ka ara mai ki roto kako ari ei. Kia ora te marino, kia waka papa paunamu te moana, kia tere ai ngā kāro i roi. Tēnā tātou.
Kia ora. Nā.
Ko tū titi tautahi te ahuri e te ki a kawania rehua.
Kia tau kia tātou katoa, te atawhai o tū tātou ari ki a Iukaraiti, me te aroha te atua, me te whiwhinga tahitanga ki te wairua tapu ake, āmine. Kia ora tātou.